Hello and welcome to another office hours from the APAC team. My name is Anka Cotwell and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I'll let the other guys introduce themselves as well.
Hi, this is Rajdeep from Hyderabad.
Hi, I'm Anirudh Devani. Again, I'm based out of Hyderabad.
And this is Tony from Hong Kong.
Great, so it's good to have the whole group of us here again today. So thank you for tuning in again. As usual, we will be fielding your questions. We posted a Google moderator link to allow you to post questions, and I can see that we have quite a few questions today, which is really fantastic. If you'd also like to join the Hangout and ask your question live, if you're following the live stream, then please message one of us on Google+, or just reply to the thread below, and we'll invite you to the Hangout. And finally, to help us collect some analytics with this, it'd be great if you could just +1 the stream. And that'll allow us to gauge how many people are viewing and also help us better tailor these Hangouts for the future. So with that being said, let's get started with the questions. I can see that we have 21 at the moment, so if there's any more by the end of it, we'll check the Google moderator link once again. So feel free to post more questions. Ideally, you want to do it in the thread. All right, so the first question, and what we're going to do is we're going to answer these questions in order of votes. I hope we can get to all of them, and let's get cracking. So the first one, I think, Anirudh, would you like to take this?
Yes, so the question is, through the DDMS tool, it's easy to capture a screenshot. Is there an equally easy way to capture a video? Running the app through the emulator is too slow, and pointing a video camera at the phone seems a bit clunky. So the answer is it's not straightforward. DDMS tool does not provide a video feed to you natively, but there are some tools available developed by the community which can help you do that. My Screen Recorder, I think, is one of those, and there are many others. Also, if you want high quality video, you can use HDMI capture hardware or software with phones that have HDMI out. And you can capture the video using these tools and these hardware cards and stuff.
Yeah, so one thing which you might want to keep in mind if you're using an external application along with DDMS tool, so there is a delay of at least 1 frame. So whatever you're doing on your phone or on the emulator, trying to capture it in the tool, there is a delay of some time, at least 1 frame.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So next question is Tony. How about you for this one? Tony, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
That's
so
okay.
The question was, the Galaxy app, the Gallery app on the Galaxy Nexus managed to share both images and video with one share action. So how does it achieve this? Specifically, what is the meme type set in the intent? So the answer to this question is there is an intent action called action send multiple. So if you go to our developer site, go search for that intent, there will be some more specific details on how to use that particular intent. So with that intent, you can set multiple kind of wildcard meme type in that intent.
Okay, great. Okay, the third question is, and I'll field this one. When working with C2DM or cloud-to-device messaging, how should I handle handset uninstalls of my app on the server? How do I know when I can remove the App Engine record for that user? Will Google C2DM server notify me somehow? So if you look at the C2DM documentation at developers.google.com/android/C2DM, you will see that there's a section on there talking about in the users part of the page, and I'm just going to quote this. It says, "Uninstalling the application also has the effect of unregistering." So basically what that means is that you should get an unregister event to let you know that that particular device has uninstalled the application. I also did some digging up around some groups just to make sure that people were confirming this behavior. Now, there were some developers that said that there were some they didn't always receive that message. Now, I don't know how out of date that information is, but a trick that one of those developers posted was that when you receive the notification next time in your app, you can actually compare against the registration ID. So that particular developer scenario was where a user uninstalled the application and then reinstalled it. So effectively kind of had two registration IDs. And they reported that they were actually getting messages twice, one for each registration ID. So it's important that when you receive the C2DM messages, that you do compare the registration IDs, that they match your current installation. But having said that, as I said, the documentation states that you should be receiving the uninstall message. So I would expect it to work that way. Okay, Anirudh.
Okay, so the question is, when using SQLite on Android, many of the online examples have an SQLite open helper inside, some sort of a DL class. Are there any problems making that reference static inside the DL so that when onDestroy is called, I can simply call my DL.close? Yeah, that's so that's one solution. You can you can keep a static reference and call the close method when you're done using the or when the onDestroy is called for the SQLite helper. But what you have to take care here is the locking. So when you're using the DL across your app components like the activities or background services that may be interacting with the database, you have to take care that when you're actually accessing the database or opening a instance of the database for reading or writing, that only one, so it's not natively multi-threaded, so only one operation can go through. So a good framework piece that you can use here is the content provider. The content provider provides a uniform way of accessing your data in your SQLite databases. So if all your app content components, including the background services and the foreground activities, go through the content provider, you'll have a seamless block-free operation going on with the database.
Okay. Thanks, Anirudh. Rajdeep, I think you can take the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to do monthly reporting on crashes or app experiences. Will the Google Play Developer Console include ability to see crashes based on date criteria? Currently, I have to click every entry to see if it happened in the last month. Okay. So right now, the Developer Console doesn't support what you're asking for, but we'll give this feedback to the dev team so that they can explore including this feature depending on the priorities.
Okay, thanks, Rajdeep. I have invited Andrew Kelly to this Hangout, who's actually posted a number of these questions. So hopefully he'll be joining us soon as well. So moving on to the next question, Tony.
Yeah. So the question was, any words on when we will be able to access the NFC secure element in order to upload credit card information for using Google Wallet style application? So the answer is, at least for now, a partner has to engage directly with us, Google, to build product and service to connect to Google Wallet. So if you are interested in building an application please go to our website, www.google.com/wallets/partners. There is a contact form there you can fill out so we can contact you to talk about partnership.
Great. Thanks, Tony. I believe that there is another one for you, Tony, regarding JSON objects.
Oh, okay. So for JSON object, there's a question. The toString method doesn't allocate a size for the string builder to use for conversion. So this causes multiple buffer resizes and memory copies, which are hurting my app. Without swapping implementation, is there a fix I can use? So so we did some research, and so for high performance JSON, we kind of recommend that there's a Google-JSON project, which is a project started by a couple engineers in Google. It should handle issues like that. And also there is another open source project called Jackson, which is also a high performance JSON implementation. So I will suggest you to look at these two projects and see whether that help in your in improving your performance in your case.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tony. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, thank you. I see you posted a number of the questions. In fact, I think so far we've only been answering your questions. They were the most voted on by others. So thanks for joining.
Cool. No worries. Just going back quickly to one of the ones you mentioned earlier with the cloud-to-device messaging. If the device uninstalls the app, where does the Google server send the uninstall message to? Is it to my server? How does Google know where my server is?
How does it send the message?
Because if the user's just uninstalled the app, it can't send it back to the device because my software is not on the device anymore.
Yes, I believe what should happen is that it should send it to the server, and then when your server tries to then notify the CTDM server, tries to pass the next message through, you should get there's a message on there that says basically unknown registration or something like that.
Right, so it's when I try and send the message to the device that I'll then get the error message back saying it's no longer there.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay. Did you have any other questions? While we've got you on, we might get any other questions that you might have answered.
Don't have the list in front of me. Let me just open another window here a second.
Sure. I mean, we'll still go through the lists on the...
Okay, yeah, all mine were on that list, so...
Yeah, okay, great. So I think there's one question on there that we haven't answered yet, so why don't we get to that now? I can field this one. It said, is the expected behavior when I launch an async task from a method called via the JavaScript interface of a web view that the thread used to run the task is a web view core thread and not main? So that's a fairly long sentence.
It's a long question, yeah.
Yeah. Do I need to wrap the execute in a run-on UI thread clause? Now, my understanding of this is, so correct me if I'm wrong with your understanding, with an async task, you shouldn't make any assumptions around which thread the actual work of the async task is running. But there are a few callbacks that are guaranteed or are supposed to be running in the UI thread. So things like on pre-execute, on progress update, on post-execute, and on cancelled.
I think that's only true, though, if the async task itself is created on the main thread. If you don't create the async task on the main thread, those on pre-execute and on post-execute seem to be executed not on the UI thread, but on the same thread that created it, which is why I'm seeing this kind of strange behavior that if I launch the async task from a web view, it doesn't run on the UI task, it runs on the sort of the web view task. So then in my post-executes, I'm seeing that I have to fill out lots of run on UI thread things inside where normally I wouldn't normally have to.
So that's interesting. So are you saying then when you do the run on UI thread, it does actually execute on the run on UI?
Yeah, it works fine, but if I don't put in my post execute, if I don't wrap it in a run on UI thread, then I get the error saying that you can't modify the view from the from a background thread, from enabling a button or disabling a button. That fails because the on post execute isn't actually being run on the UI thread. It does mention it in the documentation that it should be created on the UI thread all the time, but I was just trying to work out which thread was being used when it gets called from the JavaScript interface.
Yeah, so according to the documentation, there's a section called threading rules.
Yeah.
And basically it does say that, one, you need to create the task instance, so your async task in the UI on the UI thread.
Yeah.
And when you call execute on the async task, you also need to do that on the UI thread. So I wouldn't rely necessarily on trying to make assumptions around which thread that async task will run on, other than the fact that in order to get it on the UI thread, you need to create, instantiate it, and execute it on the UI thread. Other than that, I would say because we haven't documented the behavior, I wouldn't rely on what you're seeing now, because that could change.
Yeah, I just wasn't too sure if it was a bug in the version of Android that I'm running against, or whether it was expected that anything that runs from the JavaScript interface layer runs in the context of the web view, for example.
No, like I said, because it's undocumented behavior, it could change, so I wouldn't want to harbor any guesses about that.
Cool.
The contract is basically instantiation and execution on the UI thread, and then you'll be invoked in the context of the UI thread.
Yeah, still expected behavior is that the async task basically it eases the use of UI thread, but in your case, what is happening is might not be an expected behavior. Maybe we can dig a little more, do more research, and figure out if this is a bug or is this an expected behavior which is undocumented.
Yeah, like I say, whenever I start an async task on the UI thread, it works fine. It's just that these ones were being launched from the JavaScript interface calling me back, and then I was running a background task and then trying to update the UI, and it was all kind of failing miserably until I started wrapping things in UI thread.
So did you, when the on post execute is called, did you check the thread?
Yeah. So that was what I was doing. I was doing some logging there. So there was a different thread for the background, the doing background thing, and then the on post execute was actually being executed with the web core thread view. I think was the name of it. Okay. So yes, it was definitely not running in the UI thread.
Yeah, so this then looks like an edge case, but I think we'll have to do a little more analysis on this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I think you do have a couple more questions further down, so feel free to hang around while we answer those. Okay, Tony, do you want to grab this next one?
Okay, so let me take a look.
Oh, okay, sorry. I think it's Anirudh, actually.
Okay. Alright, so the question is, I'm able to share local photos and videos using a share intent just fine with Facebook, Twitter, SMS, and Gmail, but my media does not attach when attempting to share with Google+. Are there any additional requirements for sharing to function with G+? So there are no special requirements to use G+ as one of the share chooser item, but I would suggest if you're actually trying to access the file, the image, or whatever you're trying to share using absolute local path, maybe you can try using the media content URI, which would look something like content :/ and then the image location for the media store. So this is one thing you could try. It's kind of hard to figure out or without looking at your code. So if you could share your code, that'd be great. The other thing that you can look is actually adding a permission, which is an intent flag. The flag name is flag grant read URI permission to your intent before you actually dispatch the intent to choose to allow the user to choose. So these are a couple of things you can look at. But if you still find some issues, please share your code with us, and we can take a look at that.
Cool. Rajdeep, would you like to take the next one?
Yeah, I think the next question is again from Andrew on the WebView get certificate method. when accessing an HTTPS site through WebView, the get certificate method of the WebView returns null, even though the site is secure. How do I get the certificate signature of a secure web page if this method returns null? So Andrew, is this happening for all the sites or for a particular site?
It's for all sites, but I narrowed it down further today with some more testing, and it seems to only be, well, on the limited number of devices I've got. On Android 2.3.3 I get null return from the certificate, and on Android 404, sorry, I get an actual certificate back, so it seems to be related to the version of Android rather than the particular site itself.
Yeah, so get certificate typically returns null when the site is not secure, but I think I'm just checking the documentation to see what's happening. Just give me a second. Okay, get certificate.
So Andrew, just to while Rajdeep is looking that up, just to confirm, so you're saying when you run the same code on 2.3.3 versus 4.04, you're getting different behavior there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So on which device are you getting this? Is it like device specific or version specific of Android?
It seems to be Android version specific rather than device specific.
Okay.
On one of them it's a Samsung Galaxy S2 and the other one's a Galaxy S.
Because this method has been available since API level 1.
Yeah.
So what you are saying should not happen.
I'm glad we agree.
So, yeah, I mean, if you can send more details, I think we'll investigate, but I mean, expected behavior is it should return the SSL certificate.
Yeah. With the certificate that it returns, though, it only returns a sort of a bit of information about the certificate, you know, the issuer, the date from, the date to. Is there any way to kind of get the thumbprint or the signature of the certificate?
No, I think it's basically wrapped in the SSL certificate class.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can actually get the certificate signature from the class.
Right.
He's not using the published methods. Okay, so will it be possible to share on which devices you're getting this null so that we can go back and check?
Yeah, well, the Samsung Galaxy S2 running 2.3.3 was the one that was returning null.
Okay, let me note that down. Samsung.
All right. Is there anything more, Rajdeep?
No, that's it. I think we'll have to check. But as I said, this is the expected behavior is that this is like a straightforward use case where the SSL certificate should return.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we have a question here from Archie from New Zealand that says, and I'll grab this one. How do you go about implementing an arrow pointing to a list item similar to how the Google Mail has an arrow from the viewed mail item to the item on the list? Now, I was not 100% sure of what Archie was actually asking here, so I played around with the app, and my assumption is that he's actually talking about the Gmail app on a tablet. And basically, if you look at Gmail on Android tablets, when you're looking at a specific conversation, you get your list of conversations on the, let me put it, on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side you have the current active conversation. Now, in that list on the left-hand side, the current active conversation is highlighted with a background color of blue, but on the right-hand side you'll see there's like a little indent. It kind of looks like an arrow. So what it sort of looks like is that there's an arrow coming out of that list item and opening up to the conversation on the right-hand side. So there's basically a number of alternatives that you can use to get that sort of effect. So three that I guess I could suggest, and you should try these out, see which one you find easier to implement and which one gives you the best look. But a couple that we came up with, in the actual list item itself, we already highlight which one is the current active item. So at that point, you can just add a little arrow or a triangle effectively on the right-hand side. Just put a paint in there or something along those lines, and put it on top of your list item, and it will simulate the look and feel of it. It's a little bit of a trick there. The other trick you can employ is that between that left-hand column of conversation and the right-hand side of the actual conversation, you could put a transparent view in between them, and that you can have an opaque part of it. So depending on which is the current list item, you can move that opaque part up and down to match. And the third way that you could do it is basically on that right-hand side, which is that conversation. So if you implemented it as, let's say, a fragment or even a view, you could anchor that view to the right-hand side and basically add a bit like an arrow on the left-hand side, and again move it up and down based on whether on what is the current active conversation. If you ask me personally, it's probably easiest to do the first of the three, which is the current list item, just because it'll be less effort. You have less sort of information kind of going back and forth between the different fragments. But you know, pick and choose what works best for you, and go with that. All right. Well, we have another question from Andrew here, which I will field, and then we'll try and talk to some of the other guys that are on the Hangout as well. So, on Android 3.2, when I send a C2DM message to my Zoom on the network, to my Zoom, the network icon flickers, but the message is never delivered if my app isn't running. If my app is running, the message is delivered okay. All other devices and OS versions work when the app isn't running. Andrew, this is actually one that I haven't come across before. So, is it possible for you to give us like a small sample?
हाँ मम्मी, मैं पूछ रहा था वो आकाश के स्कूल के दिनों पे क्या बोला टीचर ने?
I'm just going to mute this person. Sorry. Andrew?
Yep. Well, yeah. Essentially, I'm writing a game at the moment, and it sends notifications to the players to say, "Hey, it's your turn to play." And the idea was that if the app wasn't running and they were doing something else, it would put a little notification icon in the status bar to say, "Hey, there's something to go and do." And on all the Android devices that I've been playing around with, the only one that doesn't work is the Zoom, which is running Android 3.2. So I'm not too sure whether it's the Zoom or the version of Android that's not kind of responding. When the app is running, everything works fine, and on my S2 and my HTC Legend and all these other devices I've been testing against, when the app is not running at all, the notification still gets delivered and presented in the status bar. So it just seems to be some kind of either an obscure bug or something weird with the Zoom. I'm not too sure what it was.
Yeah, is it possible for you to send us a small little sample app or something that we can try out and we can try running it up against a Zoom?
Yeah, I should be able to package something small together, yeah.
That'd be much appreciated. So just ping one of us on Google Plus with a download link, and we can take it from there.
No worries.
All right. So we have Zaki Ahmad on the Hangout.
Yes.
Hi, Zaki. Welcome.
Hi.
Did you have any questions?
No, I'm just following the discussion here.
Okay, no problems.
Okay.
All right. If you wouldn't mind, just could you just mute your microphone when you're not talking, so we don't get too much disturbance. But thanks for joining.
Okay. Actually, I'm not an Android developer, but I'm a security specialist. So maybe I'll try to discuss about Android application security.
Sure. Well, if you come up with any specific questions that we can answer, then maybe we can get to it. But I'd love to continue going down the list in the meanwhile.
Okay. Okay, I'll just mute my microphone then.
All right. Thanks, Zaki. Okay, the next question is for Tony.
Yeah, so the question was, I want to make my menu using tab with action bar. However, action bar is not available on 2X, which is still taking 90% of market share. What is the best way to handle it? Using tab pose? Is there a roadmap for the support package? So yes, using tab host could be a solution for 2x at the moment. We understand this is important to developer to have a backward compatible action bar. So please be assured our engineering team is looking into this. So in the meantime, so if there are some other solutions like other than tab host, like for example, we heard some pretty good things about open source project like Action Bar Shallow. So you can also feel free to look into that. But we can't speak of the quality because we haven't used it, but we heard good things from other developers.
Great. I think the next one's yours too, Tony.
Okay, so could the stats in developer console showing both version names and version number? First of all, thanks for the feedback, but we also want to know, is there any particular reason why showing version name is also is not sufficient? So one thing keep in mind is for the version code is unique while version name is not. So so I think that's another reason we want to show something unique in our developer console.
I mean, this one is one of the ones I think I voted on as well because it's I think it's quite a good idea. It'd be nice just in the stats where you can see the little checkboxes to say I want to see version 5 stats, 6 stats, and version 7 of the version code. If it just had next to that what the version name was as well, because a lot of the time now that we can hand out access to the market to sort of non-developers to have a look at the stats and log on, they want to know what version the customer is going to see, so they can sit there and say, okay, let's see, how many people are running version 1.2 of the app, and that might be version code 3, without us having to go backwards and forwards telling them all the time what the different version codes map to the version numbers. It would be kind of handy just to have that displayed.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yep. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, just on that one as well, I've noticed that the market for some apps that I have, when a version gets down to sort of 0 users because they've all upgraded, that version no longer seems to appear on the chart. So if I've got version code 3, version code 4, and version code 5 of my app, and all the people who were on version code 4 have upgraded to version 5, version code 4 doesn't appear in any of the sort of the bar charts. So you can't see when they upgraded or how over time, how long it took them to move from version 3 to version 4 and so on.
Okay, that's an interesting piece of feedback. We'll take that up with the market team.
Because even in the list of checkboxes, the checkbox disappears, so it's not like I can just click the checkbox and bring it back. It's just something that seems to be missing. So
sure, we'll consult with the play team and get back to you. All right. Before we take the next question, we have Rajesh Kumar on the Hangout as well. Did you have any questions, Rajesh?
No, I don't have any question, but I'm just here for some discussion. I'm just new in Android field.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining. I'll just if you have any questions, let us know. In the meantime, I'll just mute you from a background noise perspective as well.
Okay. I'm fine.
Thanks. All right. The next question is, running the ICS or ice cream sandwich emulator with a large screen is slow. And then there are some questions about, will there be a Nexus tablet or an x86 emulator ice cream sandwich ROM? Well, so there's a few things in there. Let's start with the first one. In terms of running ice cream sandwich, the emulator for ice cream sandwich with the large screen, just recently we actually updated our emulator image so that it can actually enable hardware video acceleration. So what that means is when we normally, so the Android emulator, the way it works is that it actually emulates the entire ARM infrastructure, CPU, graphics, the whole lot, right? And of that time that's spent in that emulator spends, a lot of time is actually being spent rendering the graphics. So as a result, that's why you get slowdown, especially when you talk about large screens, because those resolutions are starting to get really, really high. Now, in that most recent version of the Android tools, what we did is we enabled support for hardware acceleration, so the graphic rendering of the emulator will actually be done by your local machine's video card. That's something that we've just introduced, and we introduced it as a sort of a beta feature, but it's something that, as a result of being a beta feature, you need to enable yourself. So what you need to do is basically go into your AVD manager and go edit the. Make sure firstly you're using the 404R2 image, or 403R2 image, sorry, and in there, in the advanced options, make sure you select GPU acceleration and actually turn it on, and then save it and start it up again. So once you do that, hardware acceleration will kick in, and I expect that you'll see a much more improved performance within your emulator itself. We've been able to run things like games in the emulator now and get reasonable speed out of them. Just keep in mind that when you enable hardware acceleration, that at the moment, enabling hardware acceleration means that you cannot enable snapshotting for that particular image. So that means that when you shut down the emulator, when you start it back up, it will start up from scratch. It won't do the hibernate process that snapshotting allows. In terms of all the other questions that were part of this, which is what's going to happen in the future, that's something we don't know. We can't really talk about, but we definitely heard the feedback about the emulator being slow for tablet-sized resolutions, and we'd love to hear your feedback to see whether it addresses your concerns. All right, Rajdeep, next question.
Yeah. I get some errors like this: preparing to install archives, basically downloading Google USB driver revision for, okay. So the question is basically that Shami is getting a file not found error when he's trying to install the Windows driver for Android SDK. So I think the easiest solution to this is the Android SDK manager has to be run as an administrator when he's trying to install the driver. I think most probably that will solve the problem. And if he's doing it from within Eclipse, then he should run Eclipse as an administrator. So that will solve this problem and a lot of other problems as well.
Cool, thank you. I believe the next question is also yours, Rajdeep.
Okay, the one on the web view, sorry, hello view? Yeah.
It's the generic ADB driver.
Okay. Is there a generic ADB driver that I can install for devices that do not ship with a driver? I need to use USB debugging. How about a new Akash tablet which will not ship with a USB driver CD? My device Micromax Funbook also has no driver CD. Well, unfortunately, we cannot ship drivers for all the devices in the market. So the best option is to check with the hardware manufacturer who is actually building the device for the USB drivers for their device. So you might want to check on Micromax support forums or the relevant forums for Akash tablet and figure out what is the best way of getting the driver for those devices.
Okay, Anirudh.
Yeah, so the next question is, when will the tutorial in developer.android.com update? I think the Hello view is outdated. So yeah, I just want to say thanks for the feedback, and we'll actually go back and take a look and see what needs to be updated. Do keep in mind that many of these tutorials and samples are meant to run starting API level 1 or the initial devices. So they sort of mean backward compatibility, not using advanced APIs. But we'll go back and we'll take a look at some of the tutorials that need to be updated. We'll go ahead and update them.
Yeah, I think this question is particularly interesting because I think what the person is saying here is that the look and feel of the apps are kind of outdated. As far as I can tell, the examples are still working, but if I think it's Fung Lam, if he or she is able to confirm whether there's any other specific problems, that would be great too.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. So, since the Galaxy Nexus is having a 720p screen resolution, is it possible to add a tablet mode into developer options? And so, it is more like developer devices helping us to develop tablet applications. Generally, what we found is that tablet mode for a Galaxy Nexus would not really be very useful. When you look at the size of a Galaxy Nexus compared to the size of a tablet, it's obviously a vast difference. So with a screen, I believe the Galaxy Nexus is like 4.6, 4.7 inches. You wouldn't really be able to interact with the screen the way you do with a tablet. So rather than try and pursue an option where you force a phone to pretend it's a tablet, a better option for you is either to use the new GPU accelerated emulator, or grab an Android tablet. If you're building software for tablets, there is absolutely nothing that's going to give you as good an experience as testing your app or running your app on that physical device. So yeah, I really don't think that a tablet mode would be something that would be useful in this case. What we'll do is, before I answer the next question, Tony, why don't you answer the one afterwards, and then I will come back to that one.
Yeah, sounds good. So this question is coming from Manish from New Delhi. So, sir, my organization want my email ID and password after my resignation. Email created on Gmail server, not his own server. So a Google Apps domain for official use. Is it legal or not? How can I find that ID company is registered or not? Please help me. So this question is kind of complicated because we can't be sure about the legality in your country, and also it depends on the contract you sign with your former employer, for example. So this is not something Google can make any recommendation. So I would suggest you to consult a lawyer.
Okay, great. All right, now we've got one question left, and the reason that I tried to save it to the end is because we've got some slides to go with it. So let me read out the question, and I'll just walk you through a very short presentation. The example and documentation for in-app billing references states that the certificate validation should be done on the server along with the nonce generation. Do you have a sequence diagram of how the server and client would interact in this example? So let me, and Andrew, it's actually your question. So let's. It's great timing here. So what I'm going to do is try something we haven't tried before. I'm going to share my screen, and Tony, can you just confirm that you can see the slides? Okay, great.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, so Andrew, these are some slides that we presented in the past about in-app billing, and I think that you'll be able to see some of those sequence diagrams that you were after. So basically, if we look at a client version of in-app billing, because there's an implementation that you can do where everything is sort of done in your app itself on the device. And
yeah, that's what I have at the moment. So I'm trying to get my public certificate off the device and onto my server is my goal.
Okay, great. So we'll start with the client version, and then we'll just migrate to the server version, and then see if you have any questions around that. So basically what we have here is we have a dotted line. You'll see. So everything above the dotted line is the Google Play server, or the back end there, and everything below the dotted line is the Android device itself. And you can see we have the Google Play client, which and the Google Play billing service is a part of that Play client. And then you have your application down at the bottom. Since we're implementing in-app billing, our application has a billing service and a billing receiver component as well. So the way it works is that with in-app billing, what you would do is register your private key. The private key is registered with the Google Play server, and your application has the public key in it. And Andrew, as you said, this is your current scenario. So the way it works is that your billing service makes a billing request. And that billing request is actually serviced by the billing service that lives inside the Google Play client on the device. Now what that client does is forwards on that billing request to the Play server, which then gets a response which is signed with the private key. That response is sent from the Play server to the Play client, and the Play client in turn then sends that signed response back to your billing receiver through the onReceive method. Now, what you do is basically use that public key, and you can verify that the return to before, but now you'll see that we have another dotted line towards the bottom third of the screen. So the top section is the Google Play server, the middle section is on the device, and the section at the very bottom is your server. And the way it looks like in this world is that the private key still stays on the Google Play server, but the public key is on your server now, so it's not part of the application. Now let's just go through that flow again. The billing service will invoke the Play client, making a billing request. Again, that billing request is passed on to the Play server, and a response is passed back to the Play client, and again signed by the private key. At this point, the Play client will still send that signed response back to your billing receiver, but what you will do is your app will then take that response and send it to your server. Now we're going to flick to the next slide, which sort of, we'll elaborate on that in a second. So after you send it to your server will then in turn send back a session token. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail now. So basically your server will have got that response, those credentials, passed in a session token back to your app, and then your app can start basically communicating with your server using that token as its sort of identification to say that it is the right one. So that session token, it's important that that it expires over time, and that it's something that you create a new one every time you sort of start a new session. But you're using that token to kind of go back and forth between your server and your app. So I think that pretty much sort of concludes that that set of slides. Did that make sense, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of where I was up to, kind of following the examples on the web. The problem I was kind of facing was one of the things you have to generate before you kind of send off your request is this kind of unique random number, this nuance thing. And then when you get the response back from Google Play, you check to see if that random number is in your list of stored numbers. And if it is, you go, okay, that's genuinely a response from the Google Play Store. Brilliant. I'll set the flag in my database for the person to have the content. It just seemed to me that there was an awful lot of communication between the device and my server. If I was going to have to generate these random numbers on the server, send it back to the device, send it off to Google Play, get it back, check on the server to see if that random number was one of the ones that was in the list that was sent out, decrypt the packet with my public key, and then set the flag in my database to say that the users bought the content. It just seemed that there was a lot of places where the process could fall down halfway through. And then I wasn't too sure as well, because my server's running in this sort of the Google App Engine, if I've got more than one instance of my application, or if my application is running on more than one instance of a server, the example in the book is a static hash map of random numbers. If my app is running on two servers and the second request goes back to the other node, it's not going to have that list of random numbers the same as the other node, and it just seemed fraught with danger going backwards and forwards. So I was just wondering if there was a best practice for that kind of stuff.
Well, in that case, you kind of want some sort of you want to persist that table of yours, and you want to make sure it's replicated across however many servers you have. So from what you're saying, it sounds like you're doing the right thing, other than the fact that it's an in-memory hash map.
Yeah, so I mean that must be like you say, the solution is to make it into a data store, and that can be shared across all the different nodes in the cluster, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Good question. Thanks for that. All right. At this point, I think we've run out of questions. I'm just doing a refresh on the moderator link. Is there anyone else on the Hangout that has any questions? No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, all right, Andrew.
Just going back to one of the questions that was mentioned earlier, is there a way or something in the pipeline perhaps whereby if I write the world's greatest app and then need to kind of give it away or sell it to Facebook, for example, is there any way I can sort of transfer an app from my Google Play account to somebody else's Google Play account?
Look, I guess we don't really talk about what may be coming, but we certainly don't have that today, let me say that.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. Welcome, Al. I think you just caught us right at the end of this. Did you have any questions?
No, I was just watching the YouTube stream, and it's a bit for Andrew. He sounded like he was trying to validate the nonce on the server. That's something that's done on the client.
Is that right? Okay. I wasn't too sure because I thought the server part, when it does the verified purchase and sort of decrypts the packet with my public key, also then does a check for the nonce. So I thought that must all have to sort of live together. That was all.
You can do that, but it's not a necessity. Mostly it's just for making sure on the client that you've got a valid response there. It's the signature verification on the server that's the important side of it.
Cool. All right, then I'm not too worried then about the number generation part on the server. That was my kind of main concern, going backwards and forwards with the random number generator just to get that on the server.
I understand your pain. I've been there several instances of App Engine, and trying to use Bigtable for storing nonces is something you can do, and it will increase security, but it's not an absolute requirement. Signature verification should be enough.
Cool. Brilliant. Excellent. Cheers for the advice.
No worries.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Al.
No worries.
Well, I think that pretty much concludes it for today. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Andrew, you had a really good set of questions for us.
A busy week.
Thank you.
We'll be back again. We'll be back again next week. And guys, we'll definitely be back again this week. We'll probably aim for the same time slot. But if I've just had a question on the thread that says, do we have more Hangouts during Asia working hours? I'm not sure, what specific part of Asia that person is from. So that can vary depending on what those hours are. So please just be direct with feedback. Let us know that this will be a more convenient time, and we'll try and accommodate it as best we can. But until then, thanks everyone for joining, and see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.